Part 2. The Silence Spreads. 3 weeks had passed since the humans stopped talking. 3 weeks of nothing. 3 weeks of empty channels and unanswered messages. The Galactic Council had sent 17 different diplomatic missions to the edge of human space. None of them received any response. It was as if humanity had simply vanished from the universe. But they had not vanished. Intelligence reports confirmed that human ships were still moving. Human colonies were still active. Human factories were still building. They were very much alive. They were simply choosing to pretend that the rest of the galaxy did not exist. On Mars Colony 7, Intelligence Officer Kevin Walsh sat in a dark room filled with glowing screens. He was 35 years old, with messy brown hair and tired eyes. He had been working 18-hour shifts for the past 2 weeks, listening to alien communications from across the galaxy. "You need to see this, sir," said Lieutenant Amy Chen, one of his junior officers. She was young, barely 25, but she was one of the best code breakers in the fleet. Kevin walked over to her station. "What do you have?" Amy pointed at her screen. "I intercepted a private message between 2 Kelvani military commanders. They are discussing the silence. Listen." She played the recording. 2 alien voices spoke in worried tones. Kevin did not understand their language, but the translation software converted their words to English. "What are the humans planning?" the first voice asked. "We do not know," the second voice answered. "Our spies cannot get close to their systems. Our listening posts hear nothing but static. It is like they have built a wall of silence around their entire civilization. This is wrong. This is not how species behave. They should be afraid. They should be trying to negotiate. Why are they so quiet? Perhaps they are building weapons. Perhaps they are preparing an attack. Or perhaps they are simply waiting for us to make a mistake." The recording ended. Kevin leaned back in his chair and smiled. The plan was working. The aliens were terrified, and humanity had not done anything except stop talking. "Send this recording to Admiral Price," Kevin ordered. "He will want to know that the enemy is scared." Far across human space, on the colony world of New Pittsburgh, Captain Nicole Harris was overseeing a very different kind of operation. New Pittsburgh was a mining colony with a population of 2 million people. It was not a military target. It was not an important strategic location. But if the aliens ever decided to attack, it would be one of the first places they would strike. Nicole was 40 years old, with short black hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had served in the military for 20 years before taking this assignment. Now, she was responsible for protecting 2 million civilians who had no idea that a war might be coming. "How many transports do we have ready?" she asked her second-in-command, Lieutenant Paul Rivera. Paul checked his datapad. 47 large transports, and about 200 smaller shuttles. We can move the entire population underground within 6 hours if we need to. Nicole nodded. "Good. Make sure everyone knows the evacuation routes, but do it quietly. No announcements, no public alerts. We do not want any information leaking to alien listening posts." "Yes, ma'am, but may I ask a question?" "Go ahead." Paul hesitated. "Why are we being so quiet? Would it not be better to show the aliens that we are strong, to let them see our preparations?" Nicole looked out the window at the busy streets of New Pittsburgh. Families were going about their normal lives. Children were playing. Workers were heading to their jobs. None of them knew that their captain was preparing for the worst. "The silence is our weapon," she said softly. "Every other species the Council has faced has done what you suggest. They have shown their strength. They have made threats. They have tried to scare the Council into backing down, and every single one of them has failed." She turned to face Paul. "We are doing something different. We are giving them nothing. No threats, no strength, no weakness, just silence. And the silence is making them imagine things far worse than anything we could actually show them." Paul thought about this for a moment. so we are using their own fear against them. Exactly. We have a lot to do, and not much time to do it. Back at the Galactic Council Station, High Chancellor Xarinth was losing patience. 3 weeks of silence was too long. He needed to show the other species that the Council was still in control. He needed to prove that humanity could not simply ignore the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. Send a patrol fleet to the human border, he ordered. 40 warships from 6 different species. Let the humans see our strength. Perhaps that will convince them to start talking. Ambassador Vorath looked concerned. Chancellor, is that wise? We do not know what the humans are planning. Sending ships into unknown territory could be dangerous. We cannot appear weak, Xarinth snapped. The other species are watching. If we do nothing, they will think we are afraid of these silent creatures. The patrol fleet will show everyone that the Council is still powerful. The fleet was assembled within a week. 47 warships from 6 different species gathered at the edge of Council territory. They were commanded by Admiral Korthax, a veteran Kelvani officer with 50 years of experience. He had fought in dozens of battles and had never lost. Move the fleet forward, Korthax ordered. Take us to the human border. Standard formation. The fleet jumped into faster-than-light travel. They emerged at the edge of human space a few hours later. Korthax expected to find human ships waiting for them. He expected warnings or threats, or maybe even weapons fire. Instead, he found nothing. Empty space. Cold stars. Silence on every channel. Scan for human vessels, he ordered. Scanning, sir. No contacts detected. Korthax frowned. That cannot be right. Intelligence reports showed human patrol ships in this area just yesterday. Where did they go? There is nothing on sensors but dust and asteroids. For 2 hours, the fleet searched the area. They found no human ships. They detected no human signals. It was as if humanity had simply stepped out of the universe and left empty space behind. Then, without warning, the first ship vanished from sensors. Admiral, the destroyer Vengeful Spirit just disappeared from our formation. Korthax spun around. What do you mean, disappeared? I mean it is gone, sir. No explosion, no distress call. 1 second it was there, and the next second it was not. Before anyone could respond, 2 more ships vanished, then 3 more, then 5 more. Korthax watched in horror as his fleet simply melted away, ship by ship, with no explanation and no warning. Full retreat, he screamed. Get us out of here now. The surviving ships turned and fled back to Council space. Of the 47 warships that had entered human territory, only 3 made it home. The rest were simply gone, lost to whatever silent horror waited in the darkness. Korthax stood before the Council the next day. His hands were shaking. His voice was barely a whisper. What happened? Xarinth demanded. What destroyed our ships? I do not know, Korthax answered. We saw nothing. We heard nothing. Our ships just disappeared, one by one. It was like fighting ghosts. The chamber fell silent. For the first time in 12,000 years, the Galactic Council understood what it felt like to be afraid. And somewhere in the darkness of human space, Admiral Daniel Price received the report and smiled. Phase 2 was complete. Now, the real fear would begin. H1. Part 3. The Council Fractures. The news of the lost patrol fleet spread through the Galactic Council like fire through dry grass. 44 warships, from 6 different species, had vanished without a trace. No wreckage, no survivors, no explanation. The only thing the 3 surviving ships could report was the terrible silence that had surrounded them before their comrades disappeared. High Chancellor Xarinth stood before the council chamber and tried to maintain control. But he could see the fear in the eyes of every delegate. He could hear the panic in their voices as they whispered to each other. The council was fracturing, and he did not know how to stop it. "We must attack now," shouted Delegate Corvin of the Morvani Federation. He was a large creature covered in thick gray scales, and his 4 eyes were wide with anger. "Send every ship we have to human space. Burn their worlds. Destroy their fleets. Show them what happens when they defy the Council." "That is madness," responded Ambassador Zelthrix of the Zelfax Collective. She was a slender being, with pale blue skin and a calm voice. "We do not know what destroyed our ships. Sending more vessels into that darkness would be sending them to their deaths. We should offer better terms. Perhaps the humans will negotiate if we give them more respect." "Respect?" Corvan spat the word like poison. "You want us to bow to these creatures? They are nothing. A single species from a single planet. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. We do not beg for peace." "Then explain what happened to our fleet," Zelthrix replied coolly. "Explain how 44 warships vanished without firing a single shot. Can your Morvani pride bring them back?" The argument continued for hours. Species that had worked together for thousands of years now turned against each other. Some wanted war, some wanted peace. Some wanted to simply hide and hope that the humans forgot about them. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains on Earth, General Christopher Dunn watched a recording of the council meeting. Human intelligence agents had planted listening devices throughout the council station years ago. Now those devices were providing invaluable information about the enemy's weakening resolve. Christopher was 60 years old, with a shaved head and broad shoulders. He had spent his entire life preparing for a war that everyone hoped would never come. Now that war was here, and he intended to win it without firing a single shot. "They are falling apart," observed Lieutenant Amanda Dunn, his daughter. She was 32, with her father's strong jaw and her mother's kind eyes. She served as his chief intelligence analyst. 3 species have already threatened to leave the council. 2 more are refusing to contribute ships to any military action. Christopher nodded slowly. "Good. The longer they argue among themselves, the less likely they are to unite against us. Our silence is doing more damage than 1,000 battleships ever could." "But how long can we keep this up?" Amanda asked. "Eventually, they will stop being afraid. Eventually, they will get angry enough to attack us regardless of the cost." "You are right," Christopher agreed. "That is why we need to keep the pressure on. We need to remind them that we are still here, still watching, still waiting. We need to make sure their fear never fades." He turned to his communications officer. "Contact Admiral Price. Tell him to begin Phase 3. It is time to show the Council our ghost fleet." Meanwhile, the Council attempted one final desperate gambit. They had captured a human freighter captain named Gregory Cole 6 months earlier. He was a civilian, a simple trader who had been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now they hoped he could be their messenger. Gregory was brought before High Chancellor Zirinth in a small private chamber. He was 50 years old, with a thick beard and weathered hands. He had spent his life moving cargo between human colonies. He had never expected to become a diplomatic pawn. "We are releasing you," Zirinth told him. "You will return to your people and carry our message. Tell them that we are willing to negotiate. Tell them that we will offer better terms. Tell them that we do not want war." Gregory looked at the alien chancellor with calm eyes. "And what makes you think they will listen to me? I am just a freighter captain. I have no power. You are human. That is enough. Your people have ignored every message we have sent. Perhaps they will listen to one of their own." Gregory was given a small ship and sent toward human space. He expected to be stopped at the border. He expected to be questioned and searched and probably imprisoned for collaborating with the enemy. Instead, nothing happened. His ship crossed into human territory without any challenge. He flew all the way to Earth without seeing a single patrol vessel. It was as if the entire human fleet had simply disappeared. He landed at a military base outside Denver and was taken to meet Admiral Daniel Price. Gregory had expected a war room full of angry officers planning attacks. Instead, he found a quiet office with a single desk and a tired-looking admiral. "The Council wants to negotiate," Gregory said. "They are afraid. They sent me to deliver their message." Daniel nodded. "I know. We intercepted their communications days ago. We knew they were sending you before you even left their station. Then why did you let me through? Why did you not stop me?" "Because it doesn't matter. You can deliver their message. You can tell me every word they said. It will not change anything. We are not going to respond." Gregory stared at the Admiral in disbelief. "You are not going to respond? They are offering peace." "They are offering submission with better packaging," Daniel corrected. "They still expect us to give up our military. They still expect us to accept their authority. They are just using nicer words now because they are scared. We did not start this silence to get better surrender terms. We started it to show them that we will never surrender at all." Gregory was released the next day. He returned to his normal shipping routes without another word. He never spoke of his meeting with Admiral Price. He never delivered any message to the Council. Weeks passed. The Council waited for a response. None came. High Chancellor Zirinth sent more messages. He offered more concessions. He practically begged the humans to just say something, anything. The silence continued. Delegate Morven of the small world of Morva suffered a complete mental breakdown during a council session. He started screaming that the humans were ghosts, spirits from the void that had come to punish the council for its arrogance. He had to be carried out of the chamber by medical staff. He never returned. 3 minor species announced their withdrawal from the council. They did not want to be associated with whatever war was coming. They would rather face the universe alone than stand beside the council when the humans finally decided to act. The Great Alliance that had ruled the galaxy for 12,000 years was crumbling, and the humans had not fired a single weapon. They had simply stopped talking and let the council destroy itself from within. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Daniel Price watched the latest intelligence reports. The council was weaker than it had been in centuries. Their fleets were scattered. Their leadership was divided. Their people were terrified. "It is time for the next phase," he said to Commander Laura Mitchell. "Prepare the Ghost Fleet. Let them see what silence looks like when it has a face." Laura smiled grimly. "Yes, sir. It is time to give them something to really be afraid of." The humans were not just waiting in the darkness anymore. They were about to step into the light. And when they did, the galaxy would never be the same. Part 4. The Ghost Fleet. 6 months had passed since the humans went silent. 6 months of fear and confusion, and slowly growing terror. The Galactic Council was a shadow of what it had once been. Species that had stood together for thousands of years now looked at each other with suspicion. Military commanders refused to send their ships into unknown space. Diplomats argued endlessly about what to do next, while doing nothing at all. Then the Ghost Fleet appeared. The first sighting came from a Kelvani research station on the very edge of their territory. Station Commander Velthrix was an old scientist who had spent his entire life studying stars and planets. He had never expected to see anything that would shake his understanding of the universe. He was wrong. "Commander," said his young assistant, her voice trembling, "you need to see this." Velthrix looked at the sensor display and felt his blood turn cold. Ships were emerging from faster-than-light travel. Human ships. Hundreds of them. They appeared out of nowhere, like ghosts stepping through a doorway from another dimension. "How many?" Velthrix whispered. 217 confirmed contacts, sir. More are arriving every minute." Velthrix rushed to the communication console. His hands were shaking as he opened a channel. "Human vessels, This is Kelvani Research Station Theta 7. Please identify yourselves. Please state your intentions. We are a civilian installation. We mean you no harm. Silence. The human ships did not respond. They did not even slow down. They continued on their course, passing within visual range of the station. Velthrix could see them through the observation window now. Massive warships, painted in dark gray and black. No lights, no signals, no life signs on any frequency. Please respond, Velthrix begged. We just want to talk. We can negotiate. We can find a peaceful solution. Please, just say something. The human ships passed the station without a single acknowledgement. They moved like shadows through space, silent and unstoppable. Velthrix watched them go with tears in his eyes. He had never felt so small and helpless in his entire life. At the head of the Ghost Fleet, Captain Matthew Brooks stood on the bridge of the lead vessel. His ship was called Defiance, and it had earned its name. Matthew was 45 years old, with dark skin and gray at his temples. He had served in the Earth Defense Force for 23 years. He had never imagined that his greatest victory would come without firing a single shot. Alien transmissions incoming, reported Commander Catherine Ellis, his executive officer. She was a tall woman with red hair and freckles, and she had a reputation for staying calm in any situation. They are begging us to respond. Threats, pleas, offers of surrender. It is quite a mix. Matthew did not even look at the communication console. Delete them all. We do not listen to anything. We do not respond to anything. We are ghosts, Commander. Ghosts do not talk. Catherine nodded and returned to her station. Around them, the bridge crew worked in perfect silence. Every officer knew their role. Every station was manned by people who understood that their job was not to fight, but to terrify. The Ghost Fleet continued its patrol along the border between human and Council space. They did not attack any stations. They did not fire any weapons. They simply moved through the darkness, visible on sensors, but completely unreachable. A constant reminder that humanity was watching. On the Galactic Council station, panic had reached new heights. Reports were flooding in from every corner of Council space. The human fleet had been spotted near Morvani territory. It had appeared at the edge of Kelvani military installations. It seemed to be everywhere at once. How was this possible? Demanded High Chancellor Zarinth. His voice was hoarse from days of emergency meetings. His forearms trembled with exhaustion and fear. How can they have so many ships? Our intelligence said their fleet was small. Perhaps our intelligence was wrong, suggested Ambassador Vorath quietly. Perhaps we underestimated them from the beginning. Or perhaps they have been building in secret, added Delegate Corvan. For once, the aggressive Morvani seemed uncertain. While we were sending diplomatic messages, they were constructing warships. While we were waiting for them to respond, they were preparing for war. But they are not attacking, observed Ambassador Zelthrix. They have passed dozens of military targets. They could have destroyed half our defense stations by now. Watch. That is what terrifies me, Zarinth admitted. I could understand an enemy that attacks. I could fight an enemy that threatens. But an enemy that simply watches and waits? How do we fight that? He had no answer. None of them did. Back in human space, Admiral Daniel Price received reports from the Ghost Fleet with quiet satisfaction. Captain Brooks was doing excellent work. The aliens were more afraid than ever. Their council was paralyzed by indecision. Their military was scattered and demoralized. Sir, said Commander Laura Mitchell, we are receiving some concerning intelligence. Several council species are spreading rumors about us. They claim that our ships are automated, crewed by machines with no capacity for mercy. Others say that we have evolved into something inhuman, that we no longer need to communicate because we have moved beyond language itself. Daniel considered this for a moment. Their imagination is creating monsters far worse than anything we could actually show them. Every species fears the unknown. We have made ourselves the greatest unknown the galaxy has ever seen. But eventually, they will learn the truth. They will discover that we are just people. Will the fear still work then? By then, it will not matter. By then, they will have learned to respect us. Not because we are monsters, but because we refuse to play their game. We refuse to beg, or threaten, or bargain. We showed them something they had never seen before. A species that does not need their approval to survive. Laura thought about this. She had followed Admiral Price for years because she believed in his wisdom. Now she was beginning to understand the full depth of his strategy. This was not just about winning a war. This was about changing how humanity was seen by every species in the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet is requesting new orders, she reported. Captain Brooks wants to know how long they should continue the patrol. Tell him to keep going until I say otherwise. Let the Council see our ships in their space for as long as it takes. Let them wake up every morning knowing that we are still there, still silent, still waiting. Months passed. The Ghost Fleet became a legend throughout Council space. Traders told stories of the silent ships that appeared without warning and vanished without a trace. Children were warned that if they misbehaved, the human ghosts would come for them. Military officers refused promotions rather than be assigned to patrol routes that might bring them near the fleet. And still the humans did not speak. They did not attack. They did not negotiate. They simply existed, a constant presence in the darkness, a reminder that some things in the universe could not be controlled by words or weapons. High Chancellor Xerath spent sleepless nights staring at star maps. He had ruled the Council for 300 years. He had faced rebellions and wars and disasters of every kind. But he had never faced an enemy like this. An enemy that did not seem to want anything. An enemy that was content to simply wait and watch while its opponents tore themselves apart. Finally, after almost a year of silence, Xerath made a decision. If the humans would not come to him, he would go to them. He would travel to Earth alone and unarmed. He would look these silent creatures in the eye and demand to know what they wanted. It was a desperate gamble. It might cost him his life, but he could no longer bear the uncertainty. He had to know the truth, even if that truth destroyed him. The great High Chancellor of the Galactic Council prepared to humble himself before the species he had once thought to conquer. And in the shadows of space, the Ghost Fleet continued its endless patrol, waiting for whatever came next. Part 5. The Breaking Point. High Chancellor Xerath stood alone on the bridge of a small, unarmed shuttle. He had left behind his guards, his advisors, and his pride. He was traveling to Earth with nothing but the clothes on his back, and the desperate hope that the humans would finally speak to him. His journey took 3 days. He expected to be stopped at the border. He expected to be scanned and searched and questioned. Instead, his shuttle was intercepted by a single patrol vessel that appeared out of nowhere, like a predator emerging from the darkness. A voice came through his communication system. It was the first human voice Xerath had heard in almost a year. The words were simple and cold. You may approach Earth. 1 vessel. No escorts. Xerath did not argue. He did not ask questions. He simply followed the patrol vessel through human space, past colonies and stations and military installations that hummed with quiet activity. The humans were not hiding. They were not afraid. They had simply chosen to ignore the Council until the Council came to them on their terms. The shuttle landed at a military base in a place the humans called Switzerland. Xerath stepped out into cold mountain air and looked around at the simple buildings and snow-covered peaks. He had expected something grand. He had expected monuments and palaces and displays of power. Instead, he found a small conference room with plain walls and simple furniture. 2 humans were waiting for him. The first was a man with gray hair and tired eyes. He introduced himself as Admiral Daniel Price. Xerath recognized the name. This was the man who had orchestrated the entire silence. This was the architect of the council's humiliation. The second was a woman with dark hair and a sharp gaze. She was introduced as Secretary of Defense Michelle Carter. She was the one responsible for human military policy. She was the one who had approved every phase of the operation. Xerath sat across from them at a simple wooden table. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence that had tormented the council for a year now filled the room like a physical presence. Finally, Xerath broke. "Why?" he asked, his voice cracking. "Why would you not speak to us? We offered terms. We offered negotiation. You could have had peace. You could have avoided all of this fear and uncertainty. Why did you choose silence?" Daniel leaned forward and looked the alien chancellor directly in the eyes. "Because your idea of peace was our slavery. Your idea of negotiation was a list of demands. You came to us expecting us to beg for mercy like every other species you have ever contacted. You wanted us to follow your script. We refused." Michelle spoke next, her tone calm and measured. "Every civilization the Council has encountered has followed the same pattern. They argue. They bargain. They eventually submit. You have built an empire on the assumption that all species will react the same way. We showed you that assumption was wrong." Xerath shook his head slowly. "But why silence? Why not simply refuse? Why not fight? We could have understood a war. We could have understood defiance. The silence was something else entirely. The silence was terrifying." Daniel finished for him. "Yes, that was the point." He stood and walked to the window. Outside, snow was falling gently on the mountains. It was a peaceful scene, completely at odds with the conversation happening inside. "We are a young species," Daniel continued. "We have only been traveling among the stars for a few hundred years. Your council has existed for 12,000. We knew that we could not defeat you in a direct war. We knew that we could not outmaneuver you in diplomacy. So we did something you never expected. We removed ourselves from the conversation entirely." "But why?" Xerath pressed. "What did you hope to gain?" Michelle answered, "We hope to show you that we are not like the others. We are not afraid of your power. We do not need your approval. We are willing to wait in the darkness for as long as it takes until you are ready to treat us as equals." "And if we had attacked," Xerath asked, "what if we had sent our entire fleet to destroy your worlds?" "Then we would have fought," Daniel said simply. "And we would have lost, at least in the beginning. But we would never have surrendered. We would have made you pay for every planet, every station, every ship. And even if you had wiped us out completely, the memory of our silence would have haunted your council forever. You would have spent the rest of your history wondering what we might have become if you had simply left us alone." Xerath sat in stunned silence. He had ruled the council for 3 centuries. He had negotiated with hundreds of species. He had never met anyone like these humans. They were not stronger than the council. They were not smarter. They were simply willing to accept consequences that no other species would consider. "What do you want?" he finally asked. "Tell me your terms. I will take them back to the council." Daniel returned to his seat. He slid a single sheet of paper across the table. The document was simple, only a few paragraphs long. "Full recognition of human sovereignty," Daniel said. "Complete withdrawal of all council forces from our territory. Equal representation in council affairs. And one more thing." "What?" "An apology. Not for threatening us. We understand that you were doing what you thought was necessary. An apology for assuming that we would submit. An apology for believing that our species was weak simply because we were young." Xerath read the document carefully. The terms were harsh, but not unreasonable. The council would lose face, but it would not lose power. The humans were not asking for conquest or revenge. They were simply asking to be treated with respect. "And if we refuse?" he asked. Michelle smiled, though there was no warmth in it. "Then we return to silence, and you return to wondering what we might do next. You return to sleepless nights and fearful days. You return to watching your alliance crumble, as species wonder why they should follow a council that cannot even make one young civilization talk to them." Xerinth looked at the two humans across the table. They were not monsters. They were not machines. They were simply people who had decided that some things were worth more than easy peace. They had been willing to sacrifice everything, including their own comfort and security, to prove a point. He signed the document. The treaty was ratified by the Galactic Council within a week. There were objections, of course. Some species wanted to continue the standoff. Others wanted to punish the humans for their arrogance. But most were simply relieved that the silence was finally over. Admiral Daniel Price retired a year later. He went back to the small town where he had grown up and spent his remaining years teaching history to young people. He never spoke publicly about the doctrine of silence. He never wrote a book or gave interviews. He simply faded into quiet anonymity, just another old man with stories he would never tell. Commander Laura Mitchell took his place aboard the Resolute. She led the human fleet for another 20 years, always maintaining the policy of speaking softly and carrying the memory of silence as a warning to anyone who might threaten her people. The Ghost Fleet was eventually decommissioned. The ships were repurposed for exploration and trade. Captain Matthew Brooks became an ambassador, traveling to alien worlds to build the relationships that the silence had made possible. But the lesson was never forgotten. Throughout the galaxy, species remembered the year that humanity stopped talking. They remembered the fear and confusion and the slow realization that some civilizations could not be bullied or bargained with. They remembered that in a universe of shouting voices, each demanding to be heard, one species had discovered the power of saying nothing at all. Years later, historians would study the doctrine of silence with a mixture of admiration and unease. They would try to understand how such a simple strategy had brought the most powerful alliance in the galaxy to its knees. They would debate whether it was genius or madness, bravery or foolishness. But in the end, they all agreed on one thing. The humans had proven that sometimes the loudest statement was no statement at all. They had shown that courage was not always about fighting. Sometimes courage was about waiting. Sometimes courage was about trusting your own strength enough to let your enemies destroy themselves. And in the quiet of space, where stars burned in eternal silence, humanity had found its voice by refusing to speak. They had won their place among the stars, not through war or diplomacy, but through the simple, terrifying power of refusing to play by anyone else's rules. The galaxy would never forget, and humanity would never apologize. H1, Part 1, The Ultimatum. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive station made of white metal and blue crystal. For 12,000 years, every intelligent species had come to this place to solve their problems with words instead of weapons. The Council believed that all conflicts could be solved through talking. They had never met a species that refused to talk at all. High Chancellor Xerinth stood at the center of the council chamber. He was a tall creature with gray skin and 4 arms. His species, the Kelvani, had ruled the council for 300 years. They were proud and powerful, and they believed that every new species should bow to the wisdom of those who came before them. Today, Xerinth was going to teach the humans their place in the galaxy. "Send the message," he commanded. His voice echoed through the chamber where hundreds of alien delegates sat watching. "Tell the humans that they have 7 days to accept our terms. They will surrender their military. They will allow us to study their genetics. they will become a protectorate of the Council. If they refuse, we will take what we want by force. The message was sent at the speed of light across the vast darkness of space. It reached Earth in 3 days. It reached Admiral Daniel Price in 4. Daniel was 62 years old. He had gray hair cut short, and a face full of lines from years of hard decisions. He stood on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Resolute, the largest warship humanity had ever built. Around him, officers worked quietly at their stations. They had all seen the message. They were all waiting to see what their admiral would do. Commander Laura Mitchell walked up beside him. She was younger than Daniel, maybe 40, with brown hair tied back and sharp green eyes. She had served under him for 10 years. She knew him better than most people. "Sir," she said quietly, "the President is waiting for your recommendation. What should we tell the Council?" Daniel watched the holographic message play again. The alien Chancellor spoke with such confidence. He truly believed that humans would fall to their knees and beg for mercy. Every other species had done exactly that. The Council had conquered hundreds of worlds without firing a single shot. They simply made demands, and weaker species gave in. Daniel turned off the message. He did not watch it a third time. "Tell the President that my recommendation is simple," he said. "We say nothing." Laura blinked. "Nothing, sir?" He nodded. "Nothing at all. No response, no counteroffer, no threats. We go completely silent." The bridge crew turned to look at their admiral. This was not what they expected. Some of them thought he would recommend surrender. Others thought he would want to fight. Nobody thought he would suggest simply ignoring the most powerful alliance in the galaxy. "Sir," Laura said carefully, "with respect, what does silence accomplish? They will think we are afraid. They will think we are weak." Daniel shook his head slowly. "No, Commander. They will think something far worse. They will have no idea what we are thinking, and that will scare them more than any weapon we could build." He walked to the main view screen and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, alien empires were waiting for humanity to beg for their lives. They had prepared speeches for when humans asked for mercy. They had prepared terms for when humans tried to negotiate. They had not prepared for silence. "The Council has never met a species like us," Daniel continued. "Every civilization they have contacted follows the same pattern. First comes fear, then comes anger, then comes bargaining, finally comes acceptance. They expect us to follow those steps. When we do not, they will not know what to do." Laura thought about this for a long moment. "You want to use their expectations against them." "Exactly. They have a script. We are going to throw that script away." Daniel turned back to his crew. "Contact all fleet commanders. Tell them that Operation Silence begins immediately. No human vessel will respond to any alien communication. No human colony will acknowledge any alien presence. We will go dark across every frequency. Let them scream into the void. We will answer with nothing." The orders went out within the hour. Across human space, military bases went quiet. Civilian communication channels shut down. Trading posts stopped answering hails from alien merchants. The entire human civilization simply stopped talking to the outside universe. On the Galactic Council station, High Chancellor Zarenth waited for the human response. He expected pleading. He expected offers of tribute and promises of loyalty. The 7-day deadline passed, then 8 days, then 9. Nothing came. Zarenth called an emergency meeting of the Council. Delegates from 100 different species filled the chamber, all of them confused and worried. "What does their silence mean?" asked Delegate Morvan, a small creature with 4 eyes and blue fur. His species had joined the Council only 50 years ago. They had surrendered within 2 days of receiving the Council's demands. He could not understand why any species would refuse. Perhaps their communication systems are damaged, suggested Ambassador Vorath. He was an old Kelvani, almost as old as Zarinth himself. Perhaps they did not receive our message. Zarinth shook his head. We confirmed delivery. They received the message. They simply chose not to answer. The chamber fell silent. This had never happened before. In 12,000 years of history, every species had responded to council demands. Some had fought. Some had surrendered. Some had tried to run. But all of them had said something. The humans said nothing. What do we do? Morven asked, his voice trembling. Zarinth looked out at the assembled delegates. For the first time in his long career, he did not have an answer. He had spent centuries learning how to respond to every possible reaction from new species. He had never learned how to respond to no reaction at all. We wait, he said finally. We give them more time. Perhaps they need to discuss among themselves. Perhaps their leaders are slow to make decisions. But even as he spoke, Zarinth felt something cold growing in his chest. It was a feeling he had not experienced in a very long time. It was the feeling of not knowing what would happen next. It was the feeling of fear. Across the galaxy, Admiral Daniel Price stood on the bridge of the Resolute and smiled. The first phase of his plan was complete. The silence had begun. Now he would let it grow until it filled the dreams of every alien who had ever threatened his people. They wanted humanity to talk. Humanity would give them nothing but the cold, empty quiet of space itself. And in that quiet, fear would grow.